Welcome to this episode of Sunny's Silver Linings. Sunny's guest today is Adam Slutskin. Adam is the Chief Revenue Officer at Liongard. As a sales contributor and leader, Adam has received accolades for top sales or President Club status at every company he's worked for. And with more than 20 years of service in the United States Air Force, his distinguished military background continues to shape his winning philosophy on team building and focus on adding smart and driven colleagues who realize that collaboration and teamwork all lead to success, all of which are topics discussed in this week's episode. And now, your host, the founder and CEO of IT by Design, Mr. Sunny Kela. Over to you, Sunny.
Hi, Adam. Thank you so much for joining my podcast today. I truly appreciate your time.
Good to see you, Sunny.
Yeah, so we have been going to these channel events. And in the last year or so, Adam, not too many in-person events happening. And now we are meeting through these video calls and virtual calls. And the first time probably in the history of the channel, MSP leaders are challenged with remote leadership. How you keep your teams engaged, how you keep your teams productive, and contribute to that business outcome, that business plan that you have co-created with your team. So I'm super excited about that topic, and we're going to talk about remote leadership and distributed workforce, especially sales workforce today.
Yeah, it's a great topic. It's one that's interesting because growing up, in New York, so many of my family worked at IBM for years. And what's really interesting is, going back 30 years, even with my own father, I didn't know people went into an office. There, IBM was very remote friendly there early on. And I saw that side of it. And then, of course, before I crossed over in the MSP ecosystem, enterprise always had salespeople that were displaced, across the country a lot of times. But for the MSP ecosystem, I know that it's kind of new. We were used to having people in the office more so than maybe some of the other.
One thing that I know about you, Adam, is you have had so much success in building sales organizations, and the ConnectWise, where I got to know you were leading a huge sales force. And even I think in those days, you had Australia under you, you had Europe, and a lot of, probably all the continents, and wherever those MSPs were coming to connect, they were coming to ConnectWise. And so you have had that little bit of background building the teams, sales team especially, and leading the revenue organization. And I want us to talk about what changed in the new norm. So how can you continue to build those type of high performing sales teams in the now norm or the new norm?
Well, the good news is you can. And, look, as we look back, we'll all look back, none of us can explain it. I thought after being in the city on 9/11, nothing would ever be able to touch you just couldn't comprehend what was happening. And then, of course, this past year, but, life must always go on. And I did learn that after 9/11, New York was very resilient. The country was very resilient as we all felt it in different places. And I think that's what I saw last year and in particular, we were very resilient. I've been with Liongard now for 3 years, and very similar to what ConnectWise, you start with. There I started with 3 people. Here at Liongard, I started with 1. And we have to grow. That's the nature of life. And we build. And we really didn't hiccup. And we grew. We grew a lot last year. And I think part of that was understanding, hey, look, there's going to be this pivot. You could see starting even in early February that more likely we were going to all go to remote. We started preparing for it. And so all the tools are there, as especially our industry knows. We're a service industry. We're all about remote. The basic concept of managed service provider is leveraging the tools and the technology that allows us to scale and be an MSP so that we can manage multiple people across large geographies versus back in the day. My dad ran a similar technology services company, and you could only support what you could walk to physically, right? And now, of course, now we can scale with technology, and it's no different for sales teams.
Yeah. So, what are some best practices that you have learned more than a year? You have been managing your sales team remotely and very successfully. So, can you share with us like what it takes to provide the remote leadership or be effective with the remote leadership and produce the results as a sales team that you need to produce to feed the business plan?
Yeah, well, I think you mentioned the first word right off the bat, and that anyway that reads what I like to share on LinkedIn as I start to see the end of the career, more the beginning of the career, is it starts with leadership, Sonny. If you're not a leader when you were in the office, it's probably going to be hard for you to be a leader virtually. Mm-hmm. I don't know if one's harder than the other. They're different, but they start with leadership. They start with communication. If anything, maybe you would say you need a little bit more communication being remote than you do in person, where at least people would see you. And, what that means is, are you engaging enough? Are you sharing enough information? Are you being transparent? Do you have the right kind of cadence in your virtual meetings? I love the virtual meetings. In some ways, I feel like I get to interact with more people at the same time than I could in person, where you can only be with that person rather than I can be with everybody at once. And I enjoy it. I really do. So I think as a leader, part of it is embracing this new norm. And by the way, if you can, mm-hmm. what's really great is you're expanding your potential talent pool. Everybody's seeing it. I'll give you one example. Sonny, I like to work and help advise lots of companies. And one company that I advise, their top sales rep is in Hawaii right now for 6 weeks. Who cares? That person could be on Jupiter. With sales, what's really cool is it's also giving people the freedom to be somewhere. And this person wanted to be in Hawaii, and she's on the phone at 4:00 in the morning there. And then what's really cool is by noon or 1, she's done, because she supports the East Coast. And with the tools that we use, right, whether it's a PSA or an IT service management solution, the visibility is there. In sales, you really can't hide because you can see everything. Yeah. And so I think what's really cool is it's opened it up. People can be anywhere. They could be in any country.
So when we all used to be in one office, and it's like interaction, it's kind of really going to coffee or lunch together, at least once a month, once a week with your team. You can take your team out for happy hour. And here now our interaction is remote and virtual, and people are from, all over the place. And how do you do that relationship building when everyone is not local?
Again, I love it. The way I can engage with everybody at once is even more than when it used to be, because we're all together right here. But we're doing everything. We use gamification in just about everything. So, and I know we're going to talk about remote learning a little bit and teaching, which is one of our core values. But we've done everything from, monthly, we do company all-ups just to have fun, get together. We've sent food vouchers and everybody, and I've heard a lot of people doing similar things, where we're remotely eating together, but we bring in remote musicians. We've brought in remote magicians. We've brought in remote comedians, some better than others, but even the ones that weren't maybe as good as we had hoped, made it funny, And so we do that, or we'll just, like you had mentioned, doing the monthly, we do the first Fridays or second Fridays. And we spend a lot of time together doing those things. Now, locally, again, as people are comfortable and people are getting vaccinated, social distancing, we do get together and we'll go get food together outside, and we'll go to a restaurant and we'll sit somewhere. For those that want to come out, and we'll go eat.
Yeah.
So you can find ways. I mean, the remote app, by the way, just even on our daily huddles, because we're big into gamification, we always share different backgrounds, and people win gift cards for guessing the backgrounds. We've done everything from album covers to scenes from movies, and we give out gift cards. So trying to use the background concept to make it fun. And so everybody has fun trying to figure out what they are. By the way, I almost never get them. I'm horrible at it. I'm really bad.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting that bringing in a musician and bringing in people to laugh together. But there's no one better than you, Adam. I still remember from our morning sales huddle when you were in the advisory role for IT by Design. And every single day, I was very excited about my morning huddle when you had your kind of dad joke moment, and so you made us laugh, and you made it so much fun to come in the morning and join those huddles. So why do you need external people to do that when you are there on that call?
Because to change it up, right? To try different things. I think that's the other thing is don't be afraid to try different things. Look, this isn't anything that we've all been doing for 200 years, right? There's reasons why, for those of you that also used to come from banking and finance, I did, and growing up on Wall Street. And, things have gone and worked in certain ways for hundreds of years, and they don't want to mess with it. This is not normal. This is the new normal, like you said at the beginning. Yeah. If you're afraid or indifferent to try new things, you're probably going to struggle a little bit. Don't try to make it like it used to be. Treat it for what it is. It's different. If you embrace it, it can be better. You can open up for those of you that struggled, and you and I, you've been in the ecosystem longer than I. For me, 14 years now, and I love it. And I've seen the struggles all of those years for recruiting great talent. Well, the world is your oyster now. I just gave you one example of this rep who's in Hawaii. By the way, she is killing it. And if you're watching this, you know who you are, Brittany. But she's living in Hawaii with a bunch of friends for 6 weeks or so, and she's killing it. So don't be afraid of that. Back in the old days, we all would have been afraid of that. Yeah. That would have terrified us. Yeah. But, one thing also to touch on, man, that you brought up earlier is, you know what? It's not going to be for everybody. Yeah. But in different situations, I've seen people make adjustments. I think one of the things is, as a leader, make sure you understand your people's physicality. Some people might live with their family, might have a very small space where they can't get separation. Now, one thing is, I think you have to be tolerant as a leader to understand, hey, you might have family walking around in the background. Who cares now? Nobody cares, right? And make sure that they don't feel uncomfortable about it. You can kind of take something that maybe was a blocker for them and unleash them and make them realize it's okay. Or maybe you need to provide some local space where they have that ability to go somewhere, whether it's a WeWorks or WeWorks similar setting where they can go. I've seen it where some of the reps, they'll get together and take turns going to each other's house and working. And this is becoming easier, especially as, a lot of people are becoming vaccinated. By the way, I went to my first live show last month in Orlando, the Threat Locker show, for anybody else that was there. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, it was awesome seeing everybody in person. It really was great having that interaction. I know we all look forward to that part as well.
And we're going to create that opportunity as well, Adam. IT by Design, build it, happening.
I'm going to be there.
City in this world, New York.
I love it.
And we're going to do it.
It's a great show. The content is great. Giving you a little unplanned plug, but always call it what it is. I remember I was skeptical that first one, not of the show because it was in July, and I went. It was amazing, and the content was great. The festivities was fun as well. going around New York Harbor and Statue of Liberty and going to the Freedom Tower. Really great show for anybody looking. And I think this year it's in August, right?
It's in August, end of August.
Yeah.
And Adam, we always go to the next level. Progress, not perfection, but we do make progress. And we go big, go home. And we are taking it to the next level. And thank you for your partnership there. Coming back to our engaging topic or engaging your team. And if I'm tracking you correctly, what I'm hearing, Adam, is relationship is still where it starts for a remote leader. And team building activities are so important, and actually more important in this remote leadership or distributed workforce that we talk about. And humor is the best way to build rapport with your team. And you do a great job. And I'm so kind of, glad to hear that you are doing a lot more in terms of bringing in even more people to bring that humor in your team, that fun in your team, so that you are having fun while being productive. Now, let's move on to another piece that you mentioned earlier is learning from each other. Another great way to engage people, another way to grow together. And your well-trained salespeople are always going to be the best producers. And so let's talk about learning. How are you doing remote learning for your sales team members?
Yeah. By the way, I think that's a great one. And you know where the one challenge I think that you have to be aware of is, we always really enjoyed having a chance to bring on very young talent that's new, maybe even right out of college. And then, the old way was, hey, you could, one, by the additional training we're going to talk about that you can provide, that osmosis that they can get by sitting next to salespeople. And I know there's people that are afraid of that, but I do want to let you know, don't be. So I did have to pivot on that to make sure you understand how we're going to provide that training. Again, not just for new people, but for your more experienced people. You have new products or enhancements, refresher training. You can't train enough. For those that were in the military as well, you'll understand the stat. I like to quote it a lot. In the military, we would train 99.5% of the time to maybe fight 0.5% of the time. And I think it's no different in business, is you can't substitute training. Now, you have to have the right training. It needs to be beneficial training, and it needs to be on point. By the way, with sales teams, remember, don't try to do 4-hour training blocks. Understand the personality of a salesperson. Yeah. We have ADD, guys. So, 30, 45 minutes of focused training blocks. We like to do lunch and learns. And think about it, it's easier now than ever because people used to have to either run out, grab lunch, and then bring it back. Mm-hmm. Now, they just go to their kitchen, or a lot of times, we'll send food vouchers or Uber Eats and say, hey, have lunch on us while we do this training. But you do have to make sure that you're paying attention to the newer people who are maybe new in their careers. And one way they do that is if you have that connector, like they have an assigned mentor. With us, we have generally those junior people are what's called business development reps, right? They're the newest, most junior people usually in the sales org. And then we align them directly to a sales rep. So there is that osmosis that still is happening, even though it's remote now, through their connection with that sales rep. But one thing that we've had a lot of luck with, and this is new for me, is at Liongard, we've hired a lot of former teachers. We even have former professor who's my sales engineer. And by the way, his nickname is Professor. But we've really introduced this kind of teaching experience into our ecosystem, and it's been amazing. And we have the same kind of cadence we talked about. We have weekly learning challenges, right? And by the way, we've gamified it. So you're going to come, you're going to learn something, and then we gamify it to make it worth your while to pay attention because you can win prizes. We have individual prizes. We have team prizes. We do shout outs for people that just do a good job because it doesn't always need to be about money and giving stuff. People want to know they've done a good job and to be recognized. And I think that's just some of those things is don't give up the training. You can be even snappier. You can do your 30, 45 minutes. It can be even easier because people don't have to worry about running out to get lunch for the lunch and learn. Yeah. And of course, make sure you're spending that extra focus on the more junior people because it is a little bit different. But what's good is you can train them just as much as when you did it in person. I'm telling you, I'm seeing it, Sonny. I've been doing it. It's going great. We're exceeding numbers. You know, as long as you have visibility, you have a system of record, you're able to visualize the activities that are going on, whether it's first-time appointments, demos, volume of phone calls, how much time you're talking, how about all the other things, conversion rates, the call volume to convert to an opportunity, your conversion rate from opportunities to close deals. It's all there. You can't hide in sales.
No, you can't.
Doesn't matter where you are.
Yeah. And I know we're going to get into more like, having systems in place. But before we go there, what I'm hearing from you, Adam, in terms of learning, being at the center and learning from each other, I heard lunch and learn. I heard that mentor-mentee relationship where you have your best probably salesperson be that mentor or that professor be the mentor for someone, and having that action learning from daily huddles to weekly calls when in that moment you are learning from each other. Is that what you're doing at Liongard in terms
100%.
of learning from each other?
100%. It's part of our core value to teach and to learn. Yeah. And we can't do it enough, but it's finding the balance with anything, right? I think, people want to be able to go execute on their jobs, right? And so it's that right balance, that right cadence of, I think the one thing we all did initially is we probably moved to too many virtual meetings. And what I've seen is, I don't know if you've seen it too, is I see everybody kind of finding and pulling back and finding that right balance, where it's not too much, because people also want to get into their work cadence, especially in sales, where salespeople know their metrics and they know the numbers and they know where they need to be in an hour, at the half point in a day, the full point of a day, in a week, in a month. And so, finding that right cadence. Since I know we're focusing on sales a little bit, But by the way, this applies to everything. It's not just sales. We can talk about specific things. We'll talk about metrics and everything, but it always starts with leadership. It's got to start from the top down, not the bottom up. And you have to practice what you preach, and you can't over communicate when you're with people, with your teams, and you get those moments. Share with them what's going on behind the scenes, because the difference is when you're in the office, they could see the physical cues. They could see when you were having meetings or what, they would hear what was being discussed. Just make sure you're sharing everything. Demystify everything.
Now let's move on to our third point, because a lot of MSP owners, their concern is, Sunny, yes, I'm open to health and safety for my employees is the best thing. I mean, it's at the top that I have. I want to make sure my people are healthy, they're safe, and they're taken care of. And while I'm doing that, after engagement, my goal is to make sure that they are producing and they are contributing effectively, and I'm setting them up for success. Can you talk to us in this now distributed workforce, and especially in the context of sales workforce, what are you doing to make sure that people are set up for success in terms of their deliverables, in terms of their results, in terms of their productivity?
Yeah, and I think, what we're doing is putting it all together, right? So we talked a little bit about, do you have the right communication cadence? Right? Are you effectively listening as well as giving information? Because remember, on that first part, what's different now is there's this blending of your personal life and your work life like none of us have seen before. I love being connected with my teams and knowing them, knowing their families, knowing what makes them happy inside and outside of the office. But I got to tell you, it's never been like it is now, because we see their families and their children, their pets online. We know that we all had to get through these unique challenges of being home all the time. I will tell you, I think productivity has never been higher because, and I've experienced, I go into an office once a week on Tuesday. I have to tell you, when I get home, I'm wiped out at 6 o'clock. When I work from home, it's the same for you. I can go to midnight, not even know it's midnight. You can just keep going and you maintain this high energy focus level. But I think the communication piece, are you having the right training? We've talked a little bit about training. You can't just assume that's going to go away, and you have to do that. And then, we're starting to talk a little bit about systems. Do you have that visual validation of what's being accomplished? And there's so many ways. We use Power BI. We use HubSpot. We're in the middle of Salesforce migration. We're going to still use HubSpot on the back end. We use Slack. When a deal hits, it doesn't matter if it's an upsell from an account manager or it's a new partner that's been onboarded, or if it's a deal that's closed, on Slack, those alerts go out. And so another way that we're building that rapport and that visual accomplishment, validation of accomplishment. But, sales, whether you were in the office or not, it always comes down to that system record. And I don't want to name the products because we all know it is. If you have a PSA, right? If you're using HubSpot, Salesforce, ServiceNow, any of them, right? It's that visual representation of all those things we've talked about. And those are the foundations of sales. And it's having those, visual reports and dashboards to be able to say, okay, we've done all these other things. We have our communication cadence. We're teaching, right? We have all of the support mechanisms in place that you have when you're in person, whether it's development, support, sales engineering, the different department leaders who can support their teammates as much as needed. And then it has to be validated with something, and it comes down to that system of record. So you can see when, for example, we were very proud when we just looked at last quarter, every one of our territories, which is a salesperson and that business development rep and that account manager, everybody hit their quota for last quarter, except for one territory. And that one territory has Europe, where they're still a little bit more in a lockdown with COVID than maybe here in North America. And we were really proud of that. And a lot of that was just because of everything we're talking about: communication, cadence, when to, have a meeting, when not to have a meeting, teaching, learning, listening, engaging with everyone to understand how is it going, because of this unique thing that now where work meets home. And sometimes one can get in the way of the other, and making sure that everybody has the tools that they need at home, right? And that's the physical hardware and the access and all of those things. But, ultimately it all points down to that funnel, man, that system of record. So when you can see if that activity is being maintained. I know that was a lot, but that's really it, and that commitment to be a leader, and to challenge yourself remotely.
Yeah. And so what I'm hearing there, Adam, is that focus on having a CRM. So making sure that the sales KPIs are clearly communicated to the team, and you're tracking those numbers that are meaningful, high impact numbers in your CRM, the system, your choice, and in the MSP world, we all know MSPs are using the PSA to track their sales and the sales pipeline and everything that they're doing in the PSA. So
or HubSpot. I know. I talk to a lot of MSPs now that are using HubSpot. What do you use, Sonny? What are you guys using? Are you using HubSpot as well?
We are HubSpot shop. Yes.
Yeah. And for those of you that aren't using it, it's like the PSA, and you can have your visual dashboards and see all the KPIs that Sonny and I are talking about, whether it's demos, calls, opportunities, first-time appointments, FTAs.
Yeah, and it's a game changer. So with the sales and marketing, the entire plan we run under HubSpot. But the idea here is that having a system in place, and having those numbers or KPIs in place and communicating with your team, because a lot of, at the end of the day is that leadership, and now it's the remote leadership. And an effective remote leader will make sure that the system is in place and the expectations are clearly communicated to the team, because a lot of time it's not the person. And sometimes I hear that, oh, this salesperson is not performing well, or this engineer is not performing well. And you ask the engineer or that salesperson, do you know what your leader is expecting from you? And answer is very vague answer. And okay, yes, I kind of know. And when someone is saying someone is not sure, you are sure that they don't know what you're expecting or what that leader is expecting from them. So great point there with having system in place and having KPIs in place. So in order to kind of recap here, Adam, that culture of communication and collaboration with your cadence, whatever you have, whatever you're using, making sure that there is regular communication and effective communication, and people have that forum, that platform where they can come and ask questions. If someone is stuck, you can help them get unstuck. And that culture of learning from each other, and the culture of success measures and clear expectations in terms of understanding what good looks like. Right? So that culture of performance management, culture of collaboration, that is so important. And thank you for sharing.
And achievement, with what we're trying to do is, it's okay. We're in business, right? And it's not always going to be kumbaya. And I think sometimes I'll see or talk to an organization that's maybe struggling one way or the other, and they're either too kumbaya or just too very all corporate. And it really is, I think, finding that balance and understanding that we are living in a world that is more blended for so many people. There's a lot of people that have worked remote for many years, like I mentioned, even growing up in it a bit. But now everybody's doing it, and understanding this new environment of blending your work life with your family life. I, for one, love it. I enjoy it. I like the way that when I get off this call, instead of just sitting in my office when I might have a little bit of downtime, I can see my children or my wife and my family, and then I can get back into it. And I find this level of productivity that's amazing. But I do like going in the office now after a year, and I go in on Tuesdays and I get to see some people in person, and you can never get enough of that. And I can't wait till the shows get going again. But listen, I know that I jump on a lot of these because I'm like, am I missing something? And I'm missing something. And I'd like to hear you on this. I think that the message I'd like to help leave everybody with, it just starts with that commitment of leadership and not being afraid to change and adjust. There's no one secret thing, I think, that's out there. I haven't found it yet that we haven't just talked about. And I think if you embrace it and just understand there is no one secret sauce to any of this, you're going to be fine. It's commitment. Are you going to find some people that may struggle in this? I think so. But I have to tell you, my experience so far has been very high not. And I think that if you have the right environment, if you're communicating enough, if you're providing those learning opportunities, if you're having that system of record, if you're trying to find those lighter moments, you have the communication that happens at a team level. And like you said, Sonny, you're doing your monthly all up because people want to hear from their leaders. And we do the same thing. And you can't do enough of that. They want to understand how everything is. By the way, they do that when they're in person. Mm-hmm. If you let the imagination run too long, they'd be like, oh my God, we're selling the company. We're going out of business. I'm like, all the different companies I've worked, not one has ever done any of those things in a negative way. But the mind wanders, so you got to demystify everything, communicate, let them know what's going on.
And it is leader's job to make sure that we lead well in this type of environment and we keep our people positive, present, and productive. And thank you so much for coming to my podcast. And I always appreciate your friendship and your partnership. And you are a great leader. And thank you for coming once again. Take care.
Thank you.